Thanks so much for joining us. Our guest this week, Tanisha Sullivan, president of the NAACP's New England Area Conference. You may know her face and name from her years as president of the NAACP Boston branch. She now oversees strategy for advancing the organization's mission in Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Maine, and Vermont. I guess Connecticut, you're still trying to lasso there.
We'll work on it.
It's good to see you, Tanisha. Thanks for coming by. So according to an analysis the Boston Globe did, in the 10 Massachusetts towns with the highest share of black residents, Donald Trump gained almost 6 percentage points on average compared to 2020. He did 6 percentage points better. That's higher than his average increase statewide. Brockton, your hometown. 2 in 5 residents are black. Trump went from 22.3% in 2020 to 27.6%. Nationally, the margin Democrat to Republican slipped from 84% to 67%, driven by desertion of black men. Why? What's going on?
I think one of the things that is important to know about this last presidential election is that so many people, through their vote, expressed deep concern about really the bread and butter issues, really being able to make ends meet, being able to pay the rent, being able to buy eggs, being able to buy gas, being able to have one job that is life-sustaining, and through their votes, really had their voices heard about the change that they wanted to see, not just in the White House, I would say, but across government. People want to know that government is working for them. That said, I think it's also important to recognize that black people are not a monolith. And so if there's anything that we can declare coming out of this election is that that is, in fact, the case. Black people are not a monolith, and in many respects represent a diversity of political ideology and perspective and are not bound to any one political party.
Does this dictate changes or rethinking of what you do and your organization's mission? For instance, does it mean less emphasis on police reform and other crime-related issues that are controversial, you know, where there's some potentially some rightward drift in the electorate?
I think it's important to understand that what we saw, and certainly I think some of the data coming out of the election, is that economics really rose to the top of the list, the top of the priority list for many voters. That does not mean that people are not concerned about public safety. That does not mean that black people or anyone is not concerned about racism and racial discrimination, nor does it mean that we have succeeded in eliminating racism. There is not a black person walking the streets, dare I say, who wants to be subject to racial profiling on any level. And so this election should not be an indication that for the NAACP or for any civil rights organizations that our work is changing. What it may mean is that the ways in which we go about advancing racial equality, fighting against racism, the tactics may change.
So, Tanisha, another outcome of election night around here was a big night and demonstration of clout by the Massachusetts Teachers Association, the largest teacher union. They yet again succeeded in getting through an important ballot question, in this case, de-linking the passage of the MCAS test with high school graduation requirement. That was followed by a wave of teacher strikes. My understanding is they'll probably go back to the ballot to try to make teacher strikes legal next year. There's also been pushback from that union on literacy reform that Governor Healey's been promoting, that is returning literacy instruction in our schools to phonics, the old way of doing it. That's an important issue for your group. over the years?
Absolutely. I have shared with many that for me, literacy is the issue.
Okay.
It is the civil rights issue. We have devastating literacy rates across the Commonwealth and in other parts of New England. Our children cannot read. And if children cannot read, if anyone cannot read, it is not possible for them to fully access really all of the promise that this country has to offer. Literacy is the #1 issue. We fully support the efforts in the Commonwealth here to advance the science of reading and to integrate the principles of phonics. That's how I learned how to read.
Yeah, me too.
Into the curriculum.
Well, the union says, and I've seen their testimony at hearings on this, no. Individual teachers and districts will make these decisions about how subjects are taught, not at the state level, but out. That's their message. What's your message to them?
My response to anyone on this issue is that it is not possible to be a civil rights champion. It is not possible to be rooted in social justice principles if we are not embracing curriculum, if we are not embracing tools that have demonstrated the ability to help people access language skills and literacy. Period, full stop. This is the issue. We have been fighting in the state legislature. We've been fighting in schoolhouses around what it's going to take to help our children learn how to read. We've got to get this right. We've got too many children who are not able to read across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
You know, after the George Floyd murder in 2020, we heard a lot of talk about improving the economic standing of Black Americans. Last summer, there was a report by the McKinsey Institute for Black Economic Mobility found major differences in the prosperity of Black residents in Suffolk County as opposed to Middlesex and Norfolk. Urban, suburban, big gap. Boston had the worst numbers in the state. Was all that talk after George Floyd just talk? And what do you make of the record of the Wu administration in promoting Black economic opportunity?
Again, I think this past November really showed us that economic opportunity is evading far too many communities. Whether we're talking about the Black community, we're talking about the Hispanic community, white folks across the country, too many Americans are not experiencing economic prosperity and opportunity. And so we have a lot of work to do. I'm hopeful that here in the Commonwealth, through the economic bond bill that was recently signed into law by Governor Healy, we'll start to unlock more economic opportunity through jobs and entrepreneurship and investment in small businesses for more people across the Commonwealth.
And the mayor?
There's work to do in the city of Boston. A bright spot is, of course, the liquor reform bill that passed the State House that started hyper-locally in Boston through the NAACP Boston branch, I might add, that will help to unlock greater economic opportunity in the hospitality industry, which is a space where we have not seen as much inclusion as, quite frankly, we should be seeing given the rich diversity of the city.
I wish we had more time, but we do not. However, please come back again soon in the new year. We'll look forward to talking with you again.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tanisha Sullivan of the NAACP New England Area Conference. Just a quick reminder, starting next Sunday and continuing for the final Sunday of the year, our two-part sit-down with Governor Maura Healey, looking back and looking forward. Hope you'll check us out for that one.